Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Wisdom Sits in Places, Landscape and Language Among the Western Apache by Keith H. Basso, narrated by Stephen J. Cohen. Western Apache Pronunciation Guide. The Western Apache language contains 4 vowels: A as in father, E as in red, E as in police, and O as in go, varying towards U as in two. All 4 vowels can be pronounced short or long depending on duration of sound. Vowel length is indicated typographically by double letters. For example, AA pronounced ah. Each of the vowels can be nasalized, which is indicated by a subscript hook under the vowel. For example, a hook under an A pronounced and a hook under a double A pronounced When one pronounces a nasalized vowel, air passes through the nasal passage so as to give the vowel a soft, slightly ringing sound. The 4 Western Apache vowels can be pronounced with high or low tone. High tone is indicated by an accent mark over the vowel. For example, an accent mark over an A, pronounced showing that the vowel is pronounced with a rising pitch. In certain instances, the consonant N with an accent mark is also spoken with high tone. Western Apache contains approximately 31 consonants and consonant clusters. 15 of them are pronounced approximately as in English: B, CH, D, H, J, K, L, M, N, S, SH, T, W, Y, Z. Another consonant in Western Apache is the glottal stop, indicated by the symbol of a single closed quote. The glottal stop can occur before and after all 4 vowels and after certain consonants and consonant clusters, produced by closure of the glottis so as to momentarily halt air passing through the mouth. The glottal stop resembles the interruption of breath one hears between the 2 O's in the English expression uh-oh. The glottalized consonants and consonant clusters in Western Apache are K, T, CH, T silent L, and TS. Other consonants and consonant clusters are DL, as in the final syllable of paddling, DZ, as in the final sound of ads, G, as in get, never as in gentle, GH, similar to G but pronounced farther back in the mouth. This consonant often sounds like a guttural W. HW, as in what, KW, as in quick. The silent L has no counterpart in English. The mouth is shaped for an L, but the vocal cords are not used. The sound is made by expelling air from both sides of the tongue. T silent L, as in tingit, TS, as in the final sound of pots, ZH, as in azure. Preface. What do people make of places? The question is as old as people and places themselves, as old as human attachments to portions of the earth, as old perhaps as the idea of home, of our territory as opposed to their territory, of entire regions and local landscapes where groups of men and women have invested themselves, their thoughts, their values, their collective sensibilities, and to which they feel they belong. The question is as old as a strong sense of place, and the answer, if there is one, is every bit as complex. Sense of place complex? We tend not to think so, mainly because our attachments to places like the ease with which we usually sustain them, are unthinkingly taken for granted. As normally experienced, sense of place quite simply is, as natural and straightforward as our fondness for certain colors and culinary tastes, and the thought that it might be complicated or even very interesting seldom crosses our minds. Until, as sometimes happens, we are deprived of these attachments and find ourselves adrift, literally dislocated, in unfamiliar surroundings we do not comprehend and care for even less. On these unnerving occasions, sense of place may assert itself in pressing and powerful ways, and its often subtle components, as subtle perhaps as absent smells in the air or not enough visible sky, come surging into awareness. It is then we come to see that attachments to places may be nothing less than profound, and that when these attachments are threatened, we may feel threatened as well. Places, we realize, are as much a part of us as we are part of them, and senses of place, yours, mine, and everyone else's, partake complexly of both. And so, unavoidably, senses of place also partake of cultures, of shared bodies of local knowledge. The phrase is Clifford Geertz's, with which persons and whole communities render their places meaningful and endow them with social importance. Yet cultural anthropologists, some of whom work for years in communities where ties to place are vital and deep-seated, have not until recently had much to say about them. Places, to be sure, are frequently mentioned in anthropological texts: the people of X, the hamlet of Y, the marketplace at Z, but largely in passing, typically early on, and chiefly as a means of locating the texts themselves, grounding them, as it were, in settings around the world, and with that task accomplished, the texts move ahead, with scarcely a backward glance, to take up other matters. Practicing ethnographers, much like everyone else, take senses of place for granted, and ethnographic studies exploring their cultural and social dimensions are in notably short supply. Human attachments to places, as various and diverse as the places to which they attach, remain in their way an enigma. Some 15 years ago, a weathered ethnographer linguist with 2 decades of field work in a village of Western Apaches already behind me, I stumbled onto places there. A curious way of speaking, I know, but that is just how it felt, and became aware of their considerable fascination for the people whose places they are. I had first gone to Sibique in the summer of 1959 as a 19-year-old college student. I was captivated by Sibique and almost everything about it, and in the years that followed, having completed graduate school, I wrote articles and monographs on such subjects as Apache ceremonial symbolism, classificatory verb stems, witchcraft beliefs, patterns of silence in social interaction, and a sardonic type of joking in which Apaches imitate white men. In between projects, no matter how captivated, you can't do anthropology all the time. I also learned to cowboy, camping and riding for weeks at a time, with horsemen from Sibique who were masters of the trade. In both anthropology and cowboying, I sometimes came up short, though not so much as to be wildly embarrassed, and when the essay on joking was done, I began to look around for something new to do. The answer came from Ronnie Lupe, chairman of the White Mountain Apache tribe, a keenly intelligent man with a splendid gift for his own Apache language and an abiding interest in Sibique, where he was born and raised. "Why don't you make maps over there?" the chairman suggested firmly in his office at White River one day. "Not white men's maps, we've got plenty of them, but Apache maps, with Apache places and names. We could use them. Find out something about how we know our country. You should have done this before." Mr. Lupe's suggestion, or was it a directive, appealed to me at once, and a few days later, having discussed it at length with some of my friends in Sibique, I informed him that I was prepared to begin. A year later, supported by a grant from the National Science Foundation, the project got underway. Basically, the project had 3 parts: traveling with Apache consultants, many of whom were active or retired horsemen, to hundreds of named localities in the greater Sibique region, talking with consultants, frequently at their homes, about places and place names and the stories that lie behind them, and listening with a newly sensitized ear to how place names get used in daily conversation by Apache men and women. The project continued for almost 18 months, spread over 5 years, 1979 to 1984, and this book is one of the results. It contains none of the maps we made. Chairman Lupe has determined that publishing these would be unwise. But places and place names, and something of what Apaches make of both, is what it is mainly about. Mainly, I say, because Apache constructions of place reach deeply into other cultural spheres, including conceptions of wisdom, notions of morality, politeness, and tact in forms of spoken discourse, and certain conventional ways of imagining and interpreting the Apache tribal past. For this and other reasons, the chapters of this book, all of which were written as independent essays, approach its central topic from somewhat different perspectives, offering as they do complementary takes on the significance of places in Apache thought and practice. The listener will also find that each chapter is centered on a different Apache person, not only because he or she figured centrally in my work, but also because senses of place, while always informed by bodies of local knowledge, are finally the possessions of particular individuals. People, not cultures, sense places, and I have tried to suggest that in Sibique, as elsewhere, they do so in varying ways. A book as short as this should not have taken so long to write. One of the reasons it did is that the experience of place, or as Rani Lupe said, how people know their country, is in anthropology and the social sciences generally lightly charted territory. There are few intellectual maps for ethnographers to follow, and therefore they are obliged to fashion them for themselves. But where does one turn for direction and helpful ideas? The answer, of course, is wherever one chooses to turn, or, as Johnson remarked to Boswell, wherever things look bright. I turned for brightness to an assortment of modern philosophers: Sartre, Heidegger, Nelson Goodman, Merleau-Ponty, Edward Casey; historians: L.P. Hartley, William David Chapman, Lowenthal; novelists and poets with a strong sense of place: Faulkner, Welty, Stegner, Cormac McCarthy, Larry McMurtry, T.S. Eliot, Heaney; writers on nature: Dillard, Ehrlich, Lopez, McPhee; a very perceptive physicist, Niels Bohr; and, since I was dealing with American Indians, to pertinent works by N. Scott Momaday, Vine Deloria Jr., Leslie Silko, Alfonso Ortiz, and other Indian authors. I have drawn, thankfully, though not always obviously, from all these sources and more, as I have from the incisive anthropology of Clifford Geertz, who continues to do it in his way, the eccentric sociology of Irving Goffman, who emphatically did it his, and the sensitive sociolinguistics of Del Hymes, who thrives on the complexities of Native American languages and likewise steers his own distinctive course. Dudley Patterson, a Sibique horseman, once said to me after a long day's ride searching for cattle in broken country, "Not many cows, but many good places. Try to hold on to them. It's good. You could learn a lot." I did try. I have learned, and I hope that those who thrive on attachments to places will find value in this account of how others do the same. In this convulsive age of uprooted populations and extensive diasporas, holding on to places and sensing fully the goodness contained therein has become increasingly difficult, and in years to come, I expect, it may everywhere be regarded as a privilege and a gift. American Indians, who settled this continent first and were the first to be displaced, understand this already in very pervasive ways. May we all learn from them, and, as Western Apaches say in prayer and regular talk, may it soon be usefully so. And may I, on that graceful note, conclude by thanking some very generous people who shared their ideas on place with me and commented on my work: Vine Deloria Jr., N. Scott Momaday, Jerry Flute, Gail Porter Basso, Karen Blue, Dan Frank, Michael Graves, Philip Greenfeld, Bill Douglas, Morris Foster, Edward Casey, Stephen Feld, Nancy Munn, Alfonso Ortiz, Del Hymes, Virginia Hymes, Richard Bauman, Joel Scherzer, Charles Frake, Roy D'Andrade, Harold Conklin, Clifford Geertz, Stephen Murray, James Carey, Eugene Hunn, Michael Silverstein, Thomas Thornton, Larry Evers, Katie Stewart, Miriam Kahn, Rachel Hadass, Sue Allen Mills, Alan Wilson, Julie Cruikshank, William Hanks, Scott Rushforth, Peter Whiteley, Jane Kepp, Ray McDermott, George Marcus, Stephen Tyler, the late Sir Edmund Leach, and Elizabeth Hadass, director of the University of New Mexico Press. The standard disclaimers apply. Much of my fieldwork in Sibique was made possible by grants from the National Science Foundation and the Werner Gren Foundation for Anthropological Research. I am grateful to these organizations for their confidence and support. I would also like to acknowledge the American Anthropological Association for permission to make use of previously published material. June L. Piper prepared the final manuscript with grace, expertise, and many helpful suggestions. Finally, I wish to thank the University of New Mexico for granting me a sabbatical leave in order to finish this book, and my colleagues in the Department of Anthropology for respecting it so cheerfully. My debt to the Apache people of Sibique, which now reaches back more than 35 years, is enormous and profound. No one could ask for better teachers or finer friends than Horseman Morley Cromwell, Charles Henry, Robert Macuse, Nick Thompson, and Dudley Patterson. Although all are with their ancestors now, I know they are still on hand, for I hear their voices often as I travel through their country. How deeply they loved their country, and how pleased they were that some of their knowledge of it would be preserved and made public, subject to a set of clearly defined restrictions which have not and shall never be violated. At their urging and with their permission, this book is theirs, a gift from them to the grandchildren of Sibique, and to their grandchildren, and to theirs. Other Apache people who have taken time to instruct me and show me how to behave include Lola McCuse, to whom I am particularly grateful, Ruth Patterson, Annie Peaches, Dick Cooley, Calvert and Darlene Tesse, Esther Lupe, Rose Thompson, Ernest Murphy, Joe Case, Sam and Lillian Johnson, Charles Cromwell, Sam Enfield, Levi DeHose, Lonnie DeHose, Francis and Sarah DeHose, Nelson Lupe Sr., Roy and Nanny Quay, Teddy Peaches, Alvin Quay, Irvin Quay, Imogen Quay, Emily Quay, Simon and Beverly Enfield, Virgil and Judy DeHose, Delmar Bonney, Vincent Randall, Ned Anderson, Philip Casadore, Ola Casadore Davis, Marlo Casadore, and Franklin Stanley. I am also indebted to Nashley Tesse Sr., who helped me no end in translating the stories and place names which appear in the pages to follow. Ronnie Lupe, chairman of the White Mountain Apache tribe, for more than 20 years, has been constant in his encouragement, guidance, and advice. Working with him, as with everyone else, has been an honor and a privilege. I am also thankful for my friendship with Wayne and Flora Cole. My mother, Etolia S. Basso, has helped in many ways. My wife, Gail Porter Basso, has helped in many more. Her resilient heart and critical mind saw this project through, especially on those occasions when my spirits headed south. To Gail, with love, and to W. Now, it's pretty good. Ow. Keith H. Basso, Heber, Arizona, 1995. 1. Quoting the Ancestors. Place is the first of all beings, since everything that exists is in a place, and cannot exist without a place. Archytas, as cited by Simplicius, Commentary on Aristotle's Categories. If, as L.P. Hartley proposed, the past is a foreign country, they do things differently there. He added, to make the point, it is everywhere a land that attracts its share of visitors, and understandably so. Passage to the past is easy to come by. Any reminder of bygone times can serve to launch an excursion. Getting there is quick and efficient. A quiet moment or two is usually sufficient to make the transition, and restrictions on local travel are virtually non-existent. Memory and imagination, the most intimate and inventive of traveling companions, always see to that. And however the trip unfolds, one can proceed at an undemanding pace, exploring sites of special interest or moving about from place to place without feeling harried or rushed, which may account for the fact that returning abruptly to the country of the present, where things are apt to be rushed enough, is often somewhat jarring. Just where one ventures in the country of the past sometimes depends on where one has ventured before, on personal predilections nurtured over time, for congenial pieces of experiential terrain, the terrain of one's youth perhaps, or of where one's forebears lived, or of decisive events that altered the course of history. The possibilities are endless. Yet, whatever these preferences are, and no matter how often indulged, the past has a way of luring curious travelers off the beaten track. It is, after all, a country conducive to wandering, with plenty of unmarked roads, unexpected vistas, and unforeseen occurrences. Informative discoveries, pleasurable and otherwise, are not at all uncommon. which is why it can seem, as William Chapman has written, that the past is at its best when it takes us to places that counsel and instruct, that show us who we are by showing us where we have been, that reminds us of our connections to what happened here, and why it is as well, for the same set of reasons, that this ever-changing landscape of the active heart and mind rewards repeated visits. For wherever one journeys in the country of the past, instructive places abound. Many of these places are also encountered in the country of the present as material objects and areas, naturally formed or built, whose myriad local arrangements make up the landscapes of everyday life. But here, now, in the ongoing world of current concerns and projects, they are not apprehended as reminders of the past. Instead, when accorded attention at all, places are perceived in terms of their outward aspects, as being, on their manifest surfaces, the familiar places they are, and, unless something happens to dislodge these perceptions, they are left, as it were, to their own enduring devices. But then something does happen. Perhaps one spots a freshly fallen tree, or a bit of flaking paint, or a house where none has stood before. Any disturbance, large or small, that inscribes the passage of time, and a place presents itself as bearing on prior events. And at that precise moment, when ordinary perceptions begin to loosen their hold, a border has been crossed and the country starts to change. Awareness has shifted its footing, and the character of the place, now transfigured by thoughts of an earlier day, swiftly takes on a new and foreign look. Consider in this regard the remarks of Niels Bohr, the great theoretical physicist, while speaking in June of 1924 with Werner Heisenberg at Kronborg Castle in Denmark, Bohr's beloved homeland. Isn't it strange how this castle changes as soon as one imagines that Hamlet lived here? As scientists, we believe that a castle consists only of stones, and admire the way the architect put them together. The stone, the green roof with its patina, the wood carvings in the church constitute the whole castle. None of this should be changed by the fact that Hamlet lived here, and yet it is changed completely. Suddenly the walls and ramparts speak a different language. The courtyard becomes an entire world. A dark corner reminds us of the darkness of the human soul. We hear Hamlet's "to be or not to be," yet all we really know is that his name appears in a 13th century chronicle. No one can prove he really lived here, but everyone knows the questions Shakespeare had him ask, the human depths he was made to reveal, and so he too had to be found in a place on earth, here in Kronborg. And once we know that, Kronborg becomes a quite different castle for us. Thus, by one insightful account, does the country of the past transform and supplant the country of the present. That certain localities prompt such transformations, evoking as they do entire worlds of meaning, is not, as Niels Bohr recognized, a small or uninteresting truth. Neither is the fact, which he also appreciated, that this type of retrospective world-building, let us call it place-making, does not require special sensibilities or cultivated skills. It is a common response to common curiosities. What happened here? Who was involved? What was it like? Why should it matter? And anyone can be a placemaker who has the inclination. And every so often, more or less spontaneously, alone or with others, with varying degrees of interest and enthusiasm, almost everyone does make places. As roundly ubiquitous as it is seemingly unremarkable, placemaking is a universal tool of the historical imagination, and in some societies at least, if not the great majority, it is surely among the most basic tools of all.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?